What's up, guys? So I'm going to bring you a quick little Sunbracer Solar Warlock build. It is the build that I typically run for the majority of activities on my Warlock, and it's going to give you constant restoration times 2, make you super hard to kill, and you're going to be dishing out a lot of damage if you play it right. So we'll just jump straight into her. For your abilities, you're going to want to run Phoenix Dive. Your glide doesn't really matter, that's kind of personal preference. I prefer the burst glide because it can get you a bit more distance. You're going to want to run Incinerator Snap, solar grenades, of course. Then for your aspects, you're going to want to touch heat rises and touch flame. For your fragments, you're going to want to run Ember of Torches, Ember of Solace, Ember of Empyrean, and Ember of Ashes. Now, for weapons, you have a lot of options. You're going to want to run pretty much any kind of solar weapons. So, this trace rifle from the new raid is pretty good. Also, the trace rifle from the 30th anniversary is pretty good as well. Any solar weapon really is good to have on hand, just because once you have that restoration times 2, any solar weapon is going to allow that buff to keep going. If, say, for some reason you mess up on your rotation or your abilities don't kill something, you need to be getting solar kills to keep that restoration refreshed. So having a solar weapon to be able to quickly kill some enemies with is pretty crucial for keeping that buff going. For your primary, it honestly doesn't really matter. Like for your kinetic, Wither Horde works great just for some extra tick damage on bosses or mini bosses or whatever. I also like to run an auto rifle in that first slot because auto rifles are in for barriers this season. For your heavy, also doesn't matter really. Once again, you can run something solar like Xenophage or something if you wanted to. I'm just running a hothead just because. And then for the armor, these are the mods you're going to kind of want to run. I run double Ashes to Assets sometimes. A lot of the time I'll actually run a special ammo or a heavy ammo finder or both, and I won't even run Ashes to Assets, but it doesn't really matter. On your Sunbracers themselves, you're going to want to run Firepower for those extra orbs of power for grenade kills. You're going to want to run Bolstering Detonation for the extra ability energy on grenade damage, along with Momentum Transfer for the extra melee cooldown on grenade damage. On your chest piece, it's kind of the same thing. Doesn't really matter. You can kind of put on whatever damage resistance mods you need. I almost always run a sniper damage resistance mod because it's pretty... it's self-explanatory. A lot of the time you're going to be getting shot at from farther away, so that'll definitely help. And then I also really like to just run reserve mods for whatever weapons I'm running. So since I am running that solar trace rifle, I went ahead and threw on some solar reserves to get that extra ammo. On the boots, I run Recuperation, Absolution, and Invigoration. Recuperation is mostly just for that extra health, so if once again you manage to mess up your rotation and you don't have that restoration times 2, you can either 1 panic super and pop your Well of Radiance, or 2, if you can just find some orbs to pick up, you can heal through that. So it's just kind of like a backup plan for your ways to heal. Then I run the Absolution for obviously ability cooldown. That'll help all your ability cooldowns when you pick up an Orb of Power. And Invigoration is just going to help with your melee cooldown, which of course you're going to want lower melee because that is just going to give you your infinite grenade spam from the Sunbracers. Then for your class item, I run double Outreach for the extra melee cooldown when using your class ability, along with Distribution for all ability cooldowns when you're using it near targets. There's a bunch of different things you can run for mostly your class item in boots here, but that's just what I personally like to run. And for the stats themselves, you're going to mostly want to focus on, of course, resilience. Getting max resilience is very, very crucial for the majority of activities. That 30% damage reduction is huge. And then I would say personally, I like to focus on recovery and discipline next, but strength is also a pretty good stat to focus on for this build. I just chose to go with recovery over strength, but both those stats are good. The discipline you could honestly go without if you wanted to trade the discipline for strength, just because you're going to get infinite grenades from your Sunbracers anyway. But in order to kind of start this chain, you need to initially have a grenade. That's why I went with discipline instead. And here is the artifact setup here. The artifact does not really matter because solar isn't really in this season per se, so you're not really going to get any huge buffs from it. So honestly, you can set this up however you want. Doesn't really matter. And then just jumping straight into how you're actually going to play this build. Initially, you're going to want to hold whatever your grenade button is to consume your grenade. That's going to activate heat rises, and then you're going to want to snap your melee and immediately Phoenix dive. What that's going to do is, number one, obviously the melee is going to proc your sunbracers if it kills anything, but if it does not kill anything, diving to the ground with Phoenix dive should pretty much guarantee an ignition, which will kill the majority of red bar enemies regardless of difficulty. After hitting them with not only a full melee, but then your Phoenix dive, all that scorch, and an ignition. It's basically guaranteed to kill red bars. So, and then on top of that, your Phoenix dive is going to give you your restoration times 2 if you do it in that order. You consume your grenade, snap, then Phoenix dive. You should get restoration times 2 every single time if you do that combination. And then all you have to do at that point, if you got that melee kill or that ignition kill, is just spam your sunbracers or just your solar grenades, and those killing things is going to refresh your restoration up to, I believe it's around 12 to 15 seconds, and just keep you alive for the most part. It's practically a mobile well of radiance. It's a lot of healing. And you can see in the gameplay, this is about all you're going to want to do. I mean, it's a sunbracers build, so you're pretty much just spamming grenades, right? But once you kind of get this chain going, it's just a matter of keeping it going. So killing another enemy with your melee. If he doesn't die from the melee, Phoenix dive on him, and then spam grenades away. That's practically the build. I mean, this is a legend lost sector. I'm about 12 power level under, so you can see it's going pretty well here. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like the build, give it a thumbs up, sub to the scribe, and I like men.